escalation tonight as the White House notifies House Democrats in a letter that the president, quote, cannot permit his administration to participate in this partisan inquiry, urging Speaker Nancy Pelosi to abandon the impeachment effort and accusing Democrats of trying to reverse the results of the 2016 election. Already, the Trump administration is blocking a key witness from a deposition today.
That is an abuse of power for him to act in this way, and that is one of the reasons that we have an impeachment inquiry.
House Democrats late tonight issuing a subpoena against that witness, European Union Ambassador Gordon Sondland. He's a one-time Trump donor at the center of questions about what the president may have promised the Ukrainian leader if he helped investigate Joe Biden. According to texts released last week, a top diplomat messaged Sondland, "I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." Sondland, after talking with President Trump, according to a source with knowledge of the situation, texting back this: "The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind," adding, "I suggest we stop the back and forth by text." Now, some Democrats want Sondland to resign.
If that's what the ambassador needs to do to testify, he ought to do this.
Republicans defending the president, who's tweeting, "Unfortunately, Sondland would be testifying before a totally compromised kangaroo court, where Republicans' rights have been taken away."
What we see in this impeachment is a kangaroo court.
This entire thing is a political charade.
A congressional source with knowledge of the matter tells NBC News the whistleblower, in a memo, says a White House official who listened to President Trump's July phone call with Ukraine's leader described it as crazy and frightening. Both sides firmly entrenched, with frustration spilling over.
Everything is a clown show, and everybody in this process is losing credibility.
And tonight, our new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows Americans are divided, mostly along partisan lines, about whether President Trump should be impeached and removed from office, with 43% supporting that, 49% against it. Lester?
All right, Hallie Jackson of the White House, thanks. Let's bring in Andrea Mitchell now. Andrea, what are you hearing about the reaction to this new White House strategy?
Well, Lester, according to veteran ambassadors, today's decision blocking State Department witnesses from testifying has the diplomatic corps petrified. They're caught between what they see as their obligation to Congress and fear of losing their jobs. After decades in the Foreign Service, these veterans see their careers potentially cut short in a department that has in the past been immune from political interference, regardless of who is president. Now, many are demoralized and worried that Secretary Pompeo is more concerned about staying in the president's good graces than standing up for U.S. foreign policy. And tonight's letter from the White House indicates this is just the beginning of stonewalling. Lester?
Andrea Mitchell, thank you. Also tonight, the Turkish military is preparing for an assault against U.S. allies, the Kurds. It comes amid wide criticism of President Trump's plan to withdraw American troops from northern Syria. Richard Engel is in Turkey and has more.
Tonight, Turkish forces are massed on the country's southern border. Turkish officials say preparations are complete for a cross-border assault against U.S. allies, the Kurds of Syria. The buildup comes after President Trump announced a plan to pull U.S. troops out of the area. New video showing some already moving back. U.S. officials tell NBC News, for now, U.S. troops will remain in the country, but won't confront Turkish forces should they launch the assault. After fierce backlash from many Republicans who call his decision a betrayal of U.S. allies, the president today tweeting, "In no way have we abandoned the Kurds."
We've told Turkey, I spoke with President Erdogan of Turkey, and I said, got to treat him good, you got to take care of ISIS.
But the people in the crosshairs of the impending Turkish assault are protesting, desperately appealing for help. The Kurds have been fighting against ISIS with U.S. Special Operations Forces and have created an autonomous enclave in Syria, which Turkey wants to destroy. A Kurdish official today tweeting, "If America leaves, all will be erased." Turkey's specific goal is to create a buffer zone 20 miles deep, 250 miles long along its border inside Syria. President Erdogan showed a map of the area at the UN last month. And Erdogan doesn't want to just occupy the area. He wants to settle it with 2 million non-Kurds, Arab refugees. The Kurds say it's ethnic cleansing in the making, which they accuse President Trump of allowing. As everyone here in Turkey tonight is now watching to see if or when this country launches its assault, today President Trump confirmed he invited Turkey's president to the White House. Lester?
Richard Engel in Istanbul, thank you. The Supreme Court is back at work this weekend. Today it heard arguments in one of the most important cases of its new term. Does existing law protect LGBTQ employees on the job? Here's our justice correspondent, Pete Williams.
With pro-gay rights demonstrators spilling out into the street in front of the court, the justices heard the case of Gerald Bostock, fired from a county job in Georgia after joining a gay softball league.
I lost my livelihood. I lost my source of income. I lost my medical insurance. I was still recovering from prostate cancer.
He sued, but lower courts threw his case out.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is signed at the...
They ruled that the 1964 Civil Rights Act, signed by President Johnson, which bans job discrimination on the basis of race and sex, among other factors, does not cover sexual orientation. Bostock's lawyer says firing someone for being gay is discrimination based on sex.
And you can't think about a person's sexual orientation without thinking about his sex, right? A gay man is only a gay man if he's a man attracted to other men.
The court also heard the case of Amy Stevens, fired after she told her boss she's transgender. The lawyer for her former employer said the Civil Rights Act doesn't protect her.
All Americans, and American businesses in particular, have the right to rely on what the law says, not what someone wants it to mean.
The court today seemed divided between conservatives and liberals. Samuel Alito said Congress could not have had sexual orientation in mind when it passed the civil rights law 55 years ago. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg said Congress wasn't thinking of sexual harassment either, and the courts have said it's forbidden by the law. Today's argument comes 4 years after the Supreme Court's historic same-sex marriage ruling, written by Justice Anthony Kennedy, who has since retired. He's been replaced by Brett Kavanaugh, who was mostly silent during today's argument, suggesting his vote could be in play. 22 states now have their own laws banning job discrimination based on sexual orientation. If the Supreme Court agrees, that protection would apply nationwide. Lester?
All right, Pete Williams at the Supreme Court tonight. Thanks. 1 week after he suffered a heart attack, Senator Bernie Sanders talked about his health today. The Democratic presidential candidate said he should have paid more attention to the warning signs.
I must confess that I was dumb. I should have listened to those symptoms. So if there's any message that I hope we can get out there, is that I want people to pay attention to their symptoms.
And we're going to hear much more from Senator Sanders in an exclusive sit-down interview with our own Harry Smith. That's tomorrow right here on NBC Nightly News. In Dallas, a suspect is in custody and police are searching for 2 more men in the killing of a witness who testified at the murder trial of former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger. Our Morgan Chesky is in Dallas.
Tonight, a multi-state manhunt to find the men police say murdered Joshua Brown.
These suspects are to be considered dangerous because they're armed.
Authorities issuing capital murder arrest warrants for Thaddeus Green and Michael Mitchell in Brown's death. Brown, a key witness in the murder trial of Amber Geiger. Police say Friday the suspects drove from Alexandria, Louisiana to Dallas, meeting up with Brown to buy drugs.
Thaddeus Green gets out of the vehicle, has a conversation with Joshua Brown, which escalates into physical altercations.
The confrontation ended in gunfire. Police say Brown opened fire first before being fatally shot by Green. Today, Dallas police stressing there's no evidence tying the shooting to the Geiger murder trial and calling on local leaders to stop suggesting Dallas PD was involved.
I assure you that is simply not true.
Brown's family now calling for an independent investigation.
They don't think that the Dallas Police Department is the right agency to conduct this investigation.
Akron Dallas police say they remain committed to solving, with 2 suspects at large.
And tonight, a 3rd suspect who was shot by Brown in that confrontation is recovering tonight inside this hospital under police watch and is also charged with capital murder. Lester?
Morgan Chesky in Dallas, thank you. As the vaping illness epidemic spreads, New York announced its first vaping-related death today. The victim identified as a 17-year-old boy. That's the first reported teen death linked to vaping. NBC News has confirmed 24 deaths linked to vaping this year. Also tonight, 2 more parents sentenced in the college admissions cheating scandal. And in a rare interview, the lead prosecutor breaking his silence about actress Felicity Huffman and issuing a new message to Lori Loughlin. Here's NBC's Miguel Almaguer.
With 2 more parents, Greg and Marcia Abbott, each sentenced to a month in prison today, the federal prosecutor in the nation's largest college entrance cheating scandal is breaking his silence about the 2 highest-profile defendants.
One of the things we look to is how much money was involved.
In a rare interview with dozens of cases still open, U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling tells WCVB in Boston Felicity Huffman, who pleaded guilty to fraud and paying $15,000 to rig her daughter's SAT scores without her knowledge, may have been the least culpable parent.
She took responsibility almost immediately. She was contrite, did not try to minimize her conduct. I think she handled it in a very classy way.
With Huffman sentenced to 2 weeks in prison, Lelling seemed to send a warning to Lori Loughlin, who's pleaded not guilty and whose demeanor at times was starkly different than Huffman's.
We would probably ask for a higher sentence for her than we did for Felicity Huffman. I can't tell you exactly what that would be. The longer the case goes, we'd be asking for something substantially higher.
Tonight, with Loughlin's case headed to trial, she and her husband face decades behind bars if convicted. A true-life Hollywood thriller with its dramatic ending still to come. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
Tonight, we're tracking a major winter storm. Over a foot of snow could fall in Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. Many are in for some whiplash. Temperatures expected to plunge as much as 50 degrees in some cities, including Denver. We're also tracking a coastal storm expected to soak parts of the mid-Atlantic and New England tonight. And in the west, strong, dry winds raising wildfire concerns. PG&E warning it may cut power for up to 2 million customers to reduce the risk beginning as early as tonight or midnight tonight. There's new fallout this evening in the NBA's firestorm with China.
See how they're coping coming up.
On tonight's CBS Evening News, there's a new twist in the murder of a key
of his victims for investigators. Little explains that he killed sex workers or people with drug addictions because he thought they wouldn't be missed. David?
All right, Steve Osunsame, thank you. It would appear China tonight is now strong-arming the NBA, all of this after a tweet from the general manager of the Houston Rockets supporting Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters. China is now refusing to air NBA games. Here's Tom Llamas.
Tonight, China putting the full court press on the NBA. Their main broadcasting network refusing to air 2 preseason NBA games and appearing to threaten their billion-dollar-plus contract with the league. It all started with this tweet from Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey. Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong. Morey showing support for the pro-democracy demonstrators battling the Chinese-backed leaders of Hong Kong.
Daryl's tweet has hit what I would describe as a third-rail issue.
China castigating the Rockets for the tweet, demanding they, quote, correct the error.
We apologize, we love China.
That sentiment outraging many American fans and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. But today, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver trying to balance the league's $4 billion interest in China with American values.
We are not apologizing for Daryl exercising his freedom of expression.
The Chinese state broadcaster firing back, saying, "We believe that any speech that challenges national sovereignty and social stability is not within the scope of freedom of speech." David, Commissioner Silver will be in China on Wednesday for those preseason games. He hopes to meet with government officials to help defuse this conflict. David?
All right, Tom Llamas with us tonight as well. Thank you, Tom. And there is still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Tuesday. The alarming surveillance just in. Authorities now looking at this video tonight, obtained by Flyer Talk on a jet bridge. Members of a flight crew in a fight. Here in New York City tonight, the first vaping death, this time a 17-year-old. And tonight, the moment seen by millions, Ellen and former President George W. Bush at a Cowboys game. What happened on social media after, and tonight, Ellen and the Bushes now responding. A lot more news ahead here. I'll be right back.
Do you remember that?
It's obvious that these nations that are under communist rule does not want to hear any type of an opinion coming from the free world of the sovereign citizens over here. And the reason why that they don't want this is because it gives the leadership of those communist countries a black eye, and it's basically promoting a message to the rest of their citizens, hey, we support you. We believe in your cause. We had to stand up and prove to England, pertaining to going to war with the Redcoats, that we was not going to be dominated by some sort of a dictator over here in America. That, yes, did in fact cause bloodshed, but they won over on the free world towards an open, fair democracy. And whenever people say an open, fair democracy, the first thing you think of, oh, we got the right to vote. Vote in our election, our officials, and vote out our officials. That's only part of this experiment over here. The other part was being able to have the freedoms of being able to speak your mind, as long as it was not offensive and as long as it was not in a derogatory way towards threatening people's lives. But the other part is the fact that we have a right to preach our message, and it doesn't matter if it's the message of Christianity or the message of Hinduism or Voodooism. We have the right to expand upon to our right towards what belief that we want to believe in. And if we choose that we do not want to believe a certain way pertaining to a certain religion, then we don't believe that way. Nobody is putting a gun to nobody's head and forcing nobody to do anything over here that they truly don't want to do, unless you are a hardcore criminal or a bandit towards trying to rob somebody or do ill will to somebody. Nobody that I know of over here is sticking a gun to somebody's head. Now, granted, there's been times that I thought that I was being persecuted, and if the truth be known, I probably was, because of my ideology, because of my faith, because of my belief. But I stood my ground, and I didn't let them run me off. I stood my ground, and I didn't let them dominate and dictate towards what I was going to believe in, and how I was going to believe, and what I was going to say, and how I was going to say it. I'm a free moral agent just like anybody else. And if you want to go outside and worship demons and devils and become a witch or a warlock, or if you want to follow after somebody like Jim Jones or become a Jim Jones, the way that I understand the Constitution over here in America, you have that right. Now, granted, I don't believe in worshiping demons and devils. I don't believe in nobody following after somebody like Jim Jones or becoming somebody like Jim Jones. But according to our Constitution of freedom of religion and freedom of speech, that's exactly what you have the right of doing over here in America. To where in other parts of the planet, especially China, any communist-controlled country, you do not have that right. So it's not just about voting in and out your officials, your elected officials or candidates who you like or who you don't like. That's only part of it. That's only part of the experiment pertaining to free, open, fair democracy here in America.
Right here, our team getting a first-hand look at what scientists say is a clear and alarming sign of climate change. Massive glaciers visited by millions shrinking and far faster than expected. ABC's James Longman takes us 12,000 feet up Mont Blanc.
It's the tallest mountain in Western Europe and a tourist destination for millions. But tonight, Mont Blanc and its massive glaciers are in the crosshairs of climate change.
Where I am right now, this is France. Behind us over there, behind Mont Blanc, that is Italy, and Switzerland is over there. This mountain sits on 3 countries. It is truly vast.
A glacier on that Italian side is breaking apart 10 times more quickly than anyone expected. Nearly 9 million cubic feet of ice at risk of collapse. The danger zone below has been evacuated. We went up for a closer look.
If this part of the glacier cracks off, there would be an enormous dramatic episode of all this ice crumbling down the mountain. Yeah, exactly.
Why? A warming climate, say scientists. This frozen ocean, one of many melting glaciers around the world.
You could lose 2/3 of the glaciers.
Almost everything will disappear by 2100.
And that's just 80 years.
Yeah, it is.
David, everywhere you go here, you see shrinking glaciers. Take this one. You can see where the ice was and where it is now. It is normal for glaciers to move, but the point is that they're shrinking at an alarming rate. David?
And we know you'll stay on it. James Longman tonight. James, thank you. When we come back.
And once more, to add insult to injury, we have a president by the name of Donald Trump that thinks that global warming is some sort of fictitious ideal that a bunch of people has dreamed up so that they can master on a marketing scheme towards getting rich off of windmills, solar panels, and everybody going to electric cars. We have a leader right now in America that, as far as I am concerned, is probably one of the most careless, dangerous people. I almost said on the planet, but one of the most dangerous people in politics here in America, because he don't understand different concepts. Blind in one eye and can't see in the other, like my grandmother used to say. It's sad. Really, really sad. But whenever we see signs of deterioration on a global scale towards environmental crisis, and we ignore those, we are asking for trouble. Thanks again to my viewers, and good luck to all of us. Shalom.